When entering in time for employees in preparation of paying the employees through CenterPoint, there's a number of ways to get their time into the system. If you don't need to enter in their time on a daily basis and allocate their time on a daily basis, then the time can be entered manually directly into the pay run in lump sum totals. For example, this employee worked 40 hours this week, and you would just enter in the 40 hours. Okay, but if you do need to record employees' time on a daily basis and allocate their time differently each day, then you might be using timesheets or a time clock to do that. To get to timesheets, we would go to Processes and Timesheets. But before we do that, we want to take and explore some preferences that have to do with timesheets. So I'm going to go to File and Preferences. And that just came up on another screen on my computer, so I'm going to drag it over here. Underneath Preferences on the left-hand side, we're going to select Payroll, and there's an option there for timesheets. Now, if yours isn't visible, you can use that down arrow to scroll for the timesheets. Since I want these changes to only be on my computer, I'm going to set this one at the Application tab. The first preference is that when you're entering in a timesheet, that time can be displayed in either military time or AM/PM. Not only is it displayed in that, but if you're manually entering in the timesheets, that's the way you're going to enter in the time. So I'm going to leave mine in military, but you can choose AM/PM if you want. The second option, hide simple overtime calculation, actually won't be something that you see on the timesheet screen. It happens to be an option that you'll see when you actually import that time into a pay run. And there is a place there where we're allowed to do a simple overtime calculation. And if you choose to do that, if you want that option to be available, you'll say no to hiding the simple overtime calculation. But if you want that to be hidden, you don't want to use it, you can set the preference to yes over here. I'm going to leave mine at no, and we'll click Save. So now to get to timesheets, I'm going to go back to Processes and Timesheets. Okay, when the timesheet screen comes up, it's going to have a default set of columns that are displayed up at the top. And I could add additional columns if I want by right-clicking on the screen and going to Add Remove Columns. Okay, you'll see a list of available columns that can be added. For example, if I want to display what department that person is assigned to as a column, I might check the column for department, and then I'm going to use this button at the very top here to move it up with the other selected columns, and then I'll use my up and down arrows below that to really specify where I want that. So I'm going to move it up right above the company. Okay, when I'm done, I can go ahead and click the OK, and that column will have been added. I can also manipulate the size of the column, the width of the column, by going up to the column heading. And when I get the two double arrows like that, I can hold down my left mouse button and I could drag it wider. And all of these settings that you set will be remembered on your computer. So the next time you come to this screen, for example, if I click close and I come back to timesheets, it should be sitting there with the same settings. In addition to adding additional columns, you can also control how it's being sorted. The column that it's currently being sorted on will be indicated by a little triangle on the far right side of the column. So it's right now it's sorted by employee abbreviation. But just by clicking on the column heading of any column, I can sort by that column. So if I wanted sorted by department, I'll click on department, and now it's sorted by department. Okay, I could go back to employee abbreviation by clicking on that column. You'll notice on my list that I actually have two companies. Well, my company does payroll, most of its payroll out of Alpine Sports. We only have one employee that is paid through Alpine Adventures, and he's a salary employee, so we don't actually enter in timesheets or import timesheets for him. So I want to filter this list so that I'm only seeing one company. Okay, the filter option will allow you to set up a filter, and you could either save it as a saved filter that you can select later. The place that you would select it at is up here in the top box there. You could, if you name a filter, you can select it over here. Or I could change my default filter, and I'm going to just change my default filter. So the first thing I want to do is filter for the company of Alpine Sports, and I'm going to add it to the filter. And now if I click apply, you'll see that it's just Alpine Sports. Well, I'm not done yet. I'm going to go back to the filter tab here, and I'm also going to filter it by a specific pay method or methods. I want those people that are hourly and piece rate, and I'm going to add them to the filter. Oh, I probably also want calculated overtime. So I'm going to change that filter and add calculated overtime. I'll click apply. And those are the employees that I really want to be able to enter in time for. So since I want it to be like that all the time, I'm going to go back to that filter tab, and I'm just going to save that as my default filter. So now if I were to exit timesheets and come back to timesheets, you'll see that it's going to always use that default filter. I could still get to those other employees by clicking on the down arrow of the current filter and going back to no filter, and then I would be able to see them or set a different filter. Okay, I'm going to go back to my default filter, and we're going to begin entering in a timesheet. Now, if you were integrated or if you had purchased our CenterPoint time clock, you would be bringing in time by going ahead and clicking on the time import option and choosing time clock there. Okay, that would bring up screens allowing you to make selections to import time from the time clock. If you are importing time using our time import module, you would go ahead and select time import. Okay, you would choose which company you're importing time for. And then you will have previously had to set up a time import definition, and you'll select which time import definition you want to be using and then where we would find the file. So this is already defaulting to finding the file in this particular folder. And then you would choose the date that you want those dated, okay, or the date. So if the time import didn't have a date on each record, this is the date that it would use, and then you would click OK. Okay, I'm not going to be importing time in this particular video. In this video, we're going to go ahead and add the time manually. So I'm going to start with the employee that I want to start with and click Add. Okay, to select a different employee, I can either click on the lookup up at the top, or I could use these arrow keys at the bottom. So if I click this first arrow key to the right, it moves to the next employee on the list. And if I click it again, it moves to the next employee. So I can scroll through to whichever employee I want. If I want to go back to the first employee, I'm going to use the double arrows, and that'll take me back to that first employee, Sam Apple. When you select the employee, it'll tell you how much vacation and paid time off that he has. Okay, and then it'll also indicate how many hours you've entered, how many hours offered you've entered. If you're entering in for piece rate employees, it'll tell you how many pieces, and then the total amount of pay that you've entered in so far for that employee. When you begin a pay run, you're going to start with the date, the first date, work date of that pay run. So you could either type it in or you could select it off of a calendar. Okay, so my first date of any records is January 29th. Okay, I'm going to skip this pay default field for a minute, and we would come over here and we would choose which earning from the available earnings that we've set up for this employee that we want to go ahead and use. Now, there's a couple of different ways to enter in time. Some people prefer to enter in time with a start time and a stop time. Some people just want to enter in a total number of hours. Either way will work. Let's look at the start time, stop time first. So let's say that on this day, they worked from 0700 hours till 11 o'clock. Okay, that's going to record 4 hours of time for them. Now, if they took a break during that is unpaid, we can go ahead and put in what that break was. So if he had a 15-minute break, we could put in 0.25 hours there, and it'll take 0.25 hours away from the total number of hours for this employee. This is his rate of pay, and it's going to generate that amount of money. Okay, when you go down to the next line, it's going to default the same date. Now, I haven't entered in all of the time yet for this employee on this day, so this next day, this next line could represent the next period of time. So let's say that they also worked from 12 to 1,600 hours. Okay, so that generates another 4 hours of pay for them. And so that's their total pay for that day. When I go down to the next line, to change the date, there I could either click on the date icon, I could type in a new date. Let's say I just need 130, I could just type in 30 here, and then that'll, oops, sorry about that. 0130 and hit tab, and that'll put in the date there. Or what I could have done, I'm going to get rid of that whole line there and come back there. What I could have done is when I get to that blank line, if you just hit the plus key on your keyboard, it will advance it one day. Okay, now if I don't want to enter in time using a start time and a stop time, what I could do instead is go directly to the hours and just put in how many hours that person worked that day. So let's say on this day, this person worked 6.5 hours. Okay, that did not require me to type in a start time, stop time, indicate breaks. You know, it's really all about what details you need to enter in. So if you don't need start time and stop time, if you don't need breaks, you can go ahead and take those off of the grid. Okay. Another thing that's happening with each line of entry is you notice that there is a detail button off to the right. So if I click on that detail button, you'll notice that with each line of entry, there might be some details that are defaulting in from the employee record. For example, this employee is default assigned to the store department. So that time record is going to the store department. Okay, if I go over to the accounting and taxes tab, we're going to see that this is the expense account that his wages going to, and the profit center that it's going to is the profit center of stores in the location of the Illinois store. Now, if you were agriculture and you were integrated with our agriculture accounting program, this might say profit center, production year, and production series there. So those labels will just be a little bit different. And if you are with our fund accounting product, this field here that says profit center might just say department. Okay, you can also change things like the tax state. If you have a person who sometimes works in a different state than their default state, you can add that tax to the person, and then here you would be able to select what tax state they were working in. You can change what workers' compensation class and so on. So those are details that are found here on this detail button. Okay, so if you have details like that that are going to change frequently, it might be more convenient to put those details on this front grid, as well as what if you had some employees that you needed to enter in pieces for piece rate. Okay, you might want to add a column for pieces. All of those different columns can be added to this front grid by right-clicking and going to Add Remove Columns. Okay, so for example, if I have people that are getting paid piece rate, I could add a column for pieces here. Okay. And if you were agriculture and you had H-2A workers, you might also want to add this column called offered. So you can put in the number of hours offered as well. But sometimes my employees work in different departments. Sometimes they work in a different location in a different profit center. And Sometimes they might even work in a different workers' compensation class. So those are some fields that I change frequently. So I might want those to be on this grid here rather than having to click on the detail button. So I can add those. I'm going to move them up. I could arrange them in whatever order I want by using my arrow keys over here. When I get them in the order I want, I'll click OK. So now you see how it makes it much easier to change those columns by having them over here. So if on the next day, let me go to 131, let's say on this next day, this person worked 8 hours, but instead of working in their typical department, they actually worked in tours and lessons. I can just easily change that department right there. Okay, and that still was the location of the store, and it didn't mean that I needed to change their profit center. Well, actually, it does mean that I need to change their profit center. Their profit center is they were working in biking tours and lessons, and the workers' compensation class didn't change. Okay, so those are fields of information that might change frequently, and that's why I put them on the list over there. Okay, now, finally, I want to talk about this field here, this pay default. The pay default allows you to create a shortcut. If you have pieces of information here that change on a regular basis, then you might want to set up what we call pay defaults because it can help change those fields a lot quicker. So I'm going to go to Setup and Payroll Details, and I'm going to set up a pay default. Okay. And I'm going to create a pay default called Argentina. And it's an Argentina tour. And when my employees are working in this particular, using this particular pay default, they would be making an hourly wage. They would be working in the Department of Tours and Lessons. Um, and their profit center would be biking tours and lessons. Okay. The location would be that they are doing that for the corporate organization. And so those are pieces of information that I want to change. Everything else, oops, also on the project, I want it to be the Argentina tour. Okay, so all of the other pieces of information I still want to default from their record. Okay, so I'm going to click Save on that. Okay, now when I'm entering in a time, so I'm going to put in their time as 0201 there. And when I want to use the Argentina tour, now that it's set up as a pay default, I can just type in part of the name of it, ARG here for Argentina tour. And look what happened is if I go over here to the right, I'll go ahead and put in that he worked, 8 hours on that day in that. But you'll see here that it automatically changed his department from store to tours and lessons. It changed his location to corporate. It changed the profit center to biking tours. And had I added the column for project, we'll just go ahead and do that. Right click and we'll just add one more column here for project. There it is. Okay, we'll also see that the Argentina project was selected. Okay, so it just creates a shortcut and can make your data entry time a little bit easier. Okay, now that I'm done with this person for his time for this week, we can go ahead and oops, I have one more day of time that I want to add for him. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're just going to use his regular defaults and say he worked 8 hours that day. Okay, when I'm done with that person, if I just want to move to the next person on the list, I can use my arrow keys, or like I said before, I can select them from up on the top here. Now, making that change will do an automatic save, so I don't really have to hit save at this point. It'll do an automatic save. The only thing that wouldn't save this record at this point would be hitting the cancel button. Okay, When you're entering in a timesheet, you can use any one of the earnings for your people. So if he had taken a paid time off, some paid time off during that time, like vacation or my PTO time, I could have entered in time in here too for that. So I did want to show you that it does allow you to enter in time using any one of their earnings. Okay, when I'm ready to go on to the next person, I can just hit the next button. But if I go back to Sam, you'll see that even though I didn't hit save, it went ahead and saved all of his time. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and enter in time for just one more person. I'm just going to go through to Stella Sapp here, and I'm just going to enter in time for I'm just going to enter in one line of data here because I just want to be able to show you something on Stella. Oops, I'm going to say that she worked 8 hours that day. And I'm going to click save on that. So when I click save here, you'll notice that each of the people that have time, you're going to see their name and you're going to see the total amount that they're being paid. Anybody who I don't have a record in for is going to show up as 0. You can come back to this at any time and edit it up to the point of adding it to a pay run. So since I haven't started the pay run yet, I can edit this at any time by just double clicking on that employee, and I could go in and make any kind of changes to any of their records. So if you're importing time from the CenterPoint time clock or from any other time import, they will import in here. You'll see that person's name, and if you need to edit that time that got imported, you would just simply double click on the employee and then you would be able to manually edit the time. Okay. If you want to print out a report of these timesheets, you can go to the Reports tab, and there will be some reports of different timesheets. One that I like to use a lot is the timesheet report over here. Okay, you would choose the time frame that you were pulling that report for, and then go ahead and click preview, and you would be able to see timesheets that were entered in for each one of your employees there. Okay, now you can make changes to that report and how it's laid out. If you need to add pieces to it for piece rate employees, you can do that. Okay. Now, if you take and highlight a person and click delete, it doesn't delete the person from the list. What it does is it deletes the timesheets that are entered in there. So if I were to go ahead and click delete on this person, um, it's going to delete those timesheets. When we create a new pay run, it'll only allow you to import timesheets that fall within the same work dates as the date you put into the pay run. Okay, so in order for all of this time to get imported into into a pay run for Sam Apple, I would need to make sure that that pay run had the dates of work dates of 129 through 22. Okay, so that is entering in the timesheets. Now I'm just going to go in to start a new pay run so I can show you how you bring those timesheets into a pay run. Okay, to do that, we're going to go to processes and pay employees. I'm going to start a new pay run. I'm going to choose by company, Alpine Sports. We're going to let it default my bank account in there, my pay run. This is the first pay run of the month. And the work dates are 128 through 2/3 of 24. And my pay date is 2/6. Okay, so since those dates are that date time frame includes all of those timesheets for Sam Apple, we should see all of those get imported. Now, if you're just taking and doing a pay run for those employees that have timesheets entered in, one of the things you could do is click on the filter here and say that you want just those employees that have timesheets, and it should filter this list over on the left to those that have timesheets. I can move them over to the right. And then when you click import timesheets, This is when you get prompted for that simple overtime calculation. Um, so that is discussed in another video, and you can explore that video on simple overtime calculations there. Okay, I'm going to not go ahead and perform the simple overtime calculation. I'm just going to go ahead and click import there. But also that preference we talked about, if you decided that you didn't want the simple overtime calculation to ever come up, then that one preference would turn that off so that you weren't always prompted for it. So it said that it imported 6 timesheets. What it meant is that it imported 6 lines of time from those time entries that I had put in. I'm going to click OK, and we're going to go to the Enter Pay tab, and you don't see the time up at the top. Where you'll see it is over here under Timesheet Earnings. That completes entering in time using timesheets in CenterPoint. You might want to also explore the video on entering in work group timesheets. That allows you to enter in timesheets the same time for more than one person and assign it to more than one person at a time. So if you have crews of people that are doing the same type of job at the same time, work group timesheets might work for you. Also, we don't typically enter in timesheets for salary employees. You could set up salary employees as hourly and do that. But if you're wanting to allocate out their time that they did work to different profit centers based off of the time that they worked, then you might also want to explore a video on salary time allocation underneath processes and salary time allocation.